Hello everyone, thank you for checking out today's video. Welcome to the very first episode of our ServiceNow Scenarios series. So in this series, we're going to be covering real scenarios that you may experience as a ServiceNow system administrator. And for the videos going forward, I promise I'll go through everything from scratch with you guys so you can kind of see my process in case I run into any sort of roadblocks and how I work through them. Fortunately for this video, I got to the very end of the recording and it was kind of a long video and I screwed up something on the recording and there's no way I'm redoing this. So I'll just walk you guys through the steps that I took to complete this scenario. But let's go ahead and show you guys what our objective is for today. So here is our scenario. So a company wants to automate the onboarding process so that when HR submits a new hire form, ServiceNow automatically creates the user, assigns them to a group, and sends a welcome email. Now, those of you that are familiar with ServiceNow, please pause the video. And if you're willing to and you want to, please go ahead and try to complete the scenario on your own. However, if you are new to ServiceNow or maybe not that familiar with some of the features of ServiceNow and you want to go through it together, we'll get started here in a moment. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so these are going to be our objectives today. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a catalog item. We'll call it New Employee Onboarding. We're going to add some different fields. So we'll have stuff like employee name, department, role, manager. We'll have some other fields in there too, and I'll show you guys what I added here shortly. Next thing that we'll do is we'll set up a flow designer that will be connected to our catalog item. And on there, we'll have a few different objectives. We'll go ahead and we'll create the user on the sys user table. We'll go ahead and we'll assign the roles that we assign to that user. We'll go ahead and add the user to a group based on the departments, and we'll send a welcome email using a notification template. Now, some of these aren't necessarily following best practice. Like you wouldn't want to assign a user directly to a role. You would want to assign a user to a group that has roles assigned to it. So that's issue number one. But again, these videos aren't intended to follow everything by the book. It's just to kind of give you guys the concept of how to do this. And then from that, you have the understanding and the skills, hopefully, to be able to do this yourself and then follow the correct way that you should be doing this, either dependent on your company's policies and or ServiceNow best practices. And I'll point out those things as we're going through all these different steps here too. Okay, so let's hop into it. So I'll go through first the catalog item that I created. Maintain items. Okay, and if you guys haven't seen my other videos and you don't know how to create catalog items, I'll put a link to those in the description. There's a few different ways you can make a catalog item. You can do it either through the catalog builder or you can do it through catalog items like I just went to maintain items. And this is the one that we made. We made New Employee Onboarding. And from here, what I did is I set it up under the service catalog under catalogs. And you probably want to go ahead and select a category so it actually shows up. So in case someone's looking for it on like the service portal or on the service catalog page, if you don't assign it to a category and add that category to your service catalog page, they're not going to be able to find it. You see I have the flow assigned, the flow that we went ahead and created. And just a normal short description here. So I put submit a request to onboard a new user. And these are our different fields. So starting with our container, because we want our fields to be side by side. I didn't want to have them one per line because then it would have been kind of long. So we have a container here that puts all of these fields side by side. So it goes left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And you can see we have first name, last name, user ID, email, manager, department, and employee role. And this is what the form looks like. Pretty basic. And again, off to the right here, you guys would want to switch this over to probably request or submit because you're not necessarily ordering something. So you'd want to switch this over when you're setting up your, I can show you guys how to do that. So like over here, instead of order, you could put, request because you're requesting a new user. You could also use submit if you wanted to, but I would probably put request here because you're requesting something. And you could do some things here like hide, save as draft, hide, add to cart, hide quantity, stuff like that. But again, out of scope for this video, I'm just showing you guys the basics. So let's go ahead and head over to the associated flow. And again, you guys that aren't familiar with Flow Designer is how you set up workflows on ServiceNow. I'll put a link to a video that I completed on Flow Designer. So in case you guys haven't used it before, it's very straightforward. And it's a very powerful tool too, so it requires minimal scripting, if any at all. So you actually don't even need to script. If you get creative enough with Flow Designer, you don't have to script at all, for the most part. Okay, so this is what our flow looks like. So our trigger is a service catalog being submitted. When you select this option, you do have to assign it to the catalog item. So you can see over here for Process Engine, I selected it. So as soon as this catalog item kicks off, it'll fire off this flow. The next thing that I'm doing is I'm collecting the catalog variables from the form that I just showed you guys. So we want to be able to use those because that's how we're going to populate our user record, for example. After that, I have a stage for ask for approval. So what I did is I asked for approval from the manager that we selected on the form, assuming they approve it. So if approved, then we go ahead and create the user record. And I'm going to go through this kind of quick, guys, because like I mentioned, if you haven't seen my Flow Designer video, this isn't meant to be a rudimentary view of all these different tools. It's just meant to kind of glance over what I did to complete everything. So here you can see we're creating a record on the sys user table, and I'm assigning all of the different fields that I want to create on that or add to that record that we're creating. So we have like first name, last name, username, email, manager, department. And I'm just grabbing those from over here off to the right. So you use your data pill picker and you just drag them over. And everything looks good there. So the next thing that we did is we went ahead and updated the requested item record. So the requested for field, because I need to use that later on when we send our notification. So I just updated the record with the new user record that we just created. So now the requested for, instead of myself as the system administrator, it should swap requested for over to the new user record that we just created. Next thing that we did is we created a user role record. And again, this is not best practice because you don't want to assign users directly to roles, but same concept applies. You could also switch this from a role over to a group or groups. So you probably want to use the slush bucket because more than likely you're going to want to be adding them to multiple groups. So you could use, instead of just using this one, you could use a for loop, and then you could just loop through all of the different groups that were selected, and then you can create a new user member group for each one of those groups that was selected on the form. But this one, what it does, it just takes the role that was selected, and you see we're grabbing that from the get catalog variables action that we selected right here. And then we're just assigning it to the user record that we just created. Next thing that we did is we created a group member record. And same thing, we just used the user record that we created earlier. I did script this just because it was easier, but you could use if and else if conditions if that's easier for you. But the script is really easy, guys. So it just looks like this. So you kind of dot walk here. What I did is I created the department variable and I just dot walked over to the department name. So if you don't select name, it's just going to give you the sys ID. So the name was a little bit easier. And then down, I just did some if and else if conditions. So if department equals IT, I just created an IT group. And then else if department is equal to HR, I just returned the HR group. And lastly, what we did is we went ahead and sent out a notification. So the notification record, let's see if I can open it up from here. It's very, very, very basic. I didn't do much to it really. But when you go to create your notification record, if you want to be able to call it from the Flow Designer, you do send when. So rather than those other two, you do triggered. And then this is what I was talking about earlier when I wanted to switch the requested for on the requested item. So rather than this going to the person that opened up the record, because we updated it, it now should be going to the this welcome email should now be going out to the user that was just created. And then here, this is the template that we're using. So the template is just kind of the layout. I cover that in another video too, if you guys want to figure out how to create templates and modify them. And then we did welcome to ServiceNow. And then I just grabbed the user's first name and last name. And if you're wondering how to do that, if you just do this little button here, it gives you all of the different fields that you can grab from the requested item record that you're referencing for your notification that you're sending out. So if I scroll down here to requested for, you hit this little plus button again, and that's how I was able to pull the first name and last name from the requested for. If I just selected requested for, I'm not sure if it would use the sysid or if it would use like first name, last name, and user ID, one of the two. And then you can see for the body of the email, it's very basic. Welcome to ServiceNow. If you have any questions, please direct them to your manager. Same thing. I just had used this plus button and I selected manager from within requested for. And you can always preview your notifications too, see how they look, and you can match them to an existing record. So like if I use a record I created earlier, greetings, welcome to ServiceNow. If you have any questions, please direct them to your manager, Abel Tutter. Okay, so let's test it out and see if it works. And I think it created some test users earlier, so I'll delete them. And there was an issue I ran into that if the user ID already exists, because that's supposed to be a unique field, it breaks the workflow. So what you'd want to do is you'd probably want to create a script include that includes a glide record where you're checking to see if that user ID that is being selected by the user, if it comes back to a matching user ID. And then if it does, you probably want to wipe that field, and then you want to add some sort of alert below that field saying the user ID already exists. Please select something else, because that'll prevent them from breaking the workflow. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it. So we'll do something like John Smith, and then we'll do J Smith, and then we'll do John at email.com. Manager would be Abel Tutter. Department, so IT. So you guys saw earlier, if I pick IT, it should put them in the IT group. If I select HR, to put them in the HR group. There's a lot of other departments, but I just did those two for the sake of time. Again, this is not best practice for employee role. You probably want to switch this over to a group and then use a slush bucket so they can select multiple groups. But just for our example, we're just using one role. So we selected ITIL, which gives the user the ability to work records and things like that, and gives them access to most things on ServiceNow. Submit. You can see we're in the awaiting approval stage. So if I scroll down, it's sitting with Abel Tutter because that was the manager that was selected. So if we do approve, hopefully the workflow didn't break. Nope, it didn't. Okay, so we're good. So it shows completed. And if we go to the flow context, we can see what's going on with the workflow, and then we'll verify that all the records and everything were successfully created. Okay, so you can see it was able to get the catalog variables. It was able to ask for approval. It was able to check that the approval was approved. And then from there, it was able to create the user record. It was able to update the requested for. So if we go back over here, it should be updated. Yeah, you can see John Smith. Oh, wow, cool. So we skipped ahead here. We can see that the user record was created. We'll see if the user has the role here in a moment. We'll see if the user was added to the group in a moment. And then we'll see if the notification went out as well. Okay, so we see the user here, but let's just pretend we didn't see the user there. So let's go over to the user table. And there's John Smith. So we created that record there. The user ID is there. It's correct. The first name's there. The last name's there. The correct department's there. Email's there. Now, if we scroll down, we do have the group that we wanted. We have the IT group. And then over here, if we filter out all the inherited, everything is coming from ITIL. So we got the ITIL group just like we wanted. So far, so good. So last thing to check would be, did the email go out? The welcome email. And it's like this was a minute ago or so. So let's see. Greetings, welcome to ServiceNow. If you have any questions, please direct them to your manager, Abel Tutter. Okay, so that all looks correct. And then it went out to John's email, which is the one that you guys saw on their profile. All right, everyone. I hope this gave you guys a great start in case you wanted to set up some sort of onboarding process for your instance. So you could expand on this so much. I mean, you could assign different tasks to the user. You can give them additional guidance, because maybe your onboarding is set up through the Employee Center. Maybe you want to give them additional guidance on how to get to the Employee Center and what they need to do when they get there. So there's so much you could do with this. It's just hopefully get you guys started. But if you guys enjoyed this video though, please consider giving this video a like. Please also consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll catch you all in the next one very soon.